Hello, this is Miriam, holistic life coach and mind-body practitioner at Pain Outside the Box. And in this video, I'm going to be unraveling 4 things that most people don't know about TMS, tension myoneural syndrome, also known as mind-body syndrome, or as neuroplastic pain, or psychophysiologic disorders. So many names to refer to the same mind-body process, to a condition that is so common and yet so overlooked. It's as if the majority of people are totally blind to it, and yet it's such a real thing in everyday life, especially for some people who have chronic symptoms. So most of you would be familiar with this concept if you've been following my videos and other resources online. So in this video, I'll just be focusing on 4 things that a lot of people misunderstand or get wrong about TMS as they embark on their own personal journey of healing. So the first one is TMS is also physical and can be physically visible or identifiable. So there is this idea among people that TMS symptoms are, of course, they are brain generated, but that they are just in the brain or just in one's head, which is actually not true. A lot of the time, symptoms are also visible. So one example would be, let's say you're going through a stressful time and you're starting to suffer from bouts of eczema or from skin rashes. Now, obviously, the eczema and the skin rashes are very visible, right? They are very physical. And the same can be said of other things that people experience, like muscle spasms that are sometimes visible. You can actually see the muscle move, or inflammation, chronic inflammation in certain areas of the body. Or, for example, IBS is another clear example. That is a very physical consequence, manifestation of a mind-body process of distress or intense stress or emotion. Conversely, of course, there are symptoms that are not as visible and that people kind of accept more as being TMS, such as unexplained muscle pain, unexplained nerve pain. So, of course, when the tests come out clear, one is more convinced that there is no physical problem. Let's say that there's no structural problem or illness. And I understand that one can be more reassured when there are when there's nothing visible on a medical test. But sometimes symptoms are visible. They are still just symptoms, and it doesn't mean that there isn't a mind-body process behind why the symptoms, these very physical symptoms, have actually developed. So that's something to keep in mind if you have very physically visible symptoms, or if your tests have detected something like, I don't know, increased inflammation, or something like an area of inflammation in the body. It doesn't mean that a mind-body process cannot help you. It also doesn't mean that other treatments cannot help you either, of course. It really depends on the situation. Fact number 2. Structural abnormalities or conditions cannot be TMS. What do I mean by this? There are a lot of people asking questions these days. Is scoliosis TMS? Is a herniated disc TMS? Is osteoarthritis TMS? And my answer to that is no. Scoliosis is scoliosis. It's something that is visible on an MRI. It is a structural imperfection, let's say. Osteoarthritis, it's a sign of a certain process that goes on in the body, and that gets more common with age. But the thing to remember is that just because you have these conditions, these structural manifestations, it doesn't mean that you don't have TMS. It's just that these are 2 separate things, okay? The problem lies when you start to blame these conditions on your TMS or on your chronic pain, because then there would be a conflict. You would be on the one hand believing that your pain is coming from, let's say, arthritis, and on the other hand believing that maybe you have a mind-body syndrome, and that constitutes a strong conflict in the brain that makes it a little bit harder to recover, okay? So again, these structural incidences, manifestations, okay, are, that's what they are. They are not TMS. TMS is pain that is being caused by a mind-body process that's intensified typically by the brain, that's typically conditioned in the body to manifest in certain ways, to crop up following certain triggers or certain times of the day, or whatever. Triggers can be anything. Okay, so that's something to remember. If you have something that's not quite perfect in your body, that's usually normal, unless there's something like a bone breakage, a tumor, or inflammation, okay? It doesn't mean that that structural abnormality is causing your pain, and it is separate from TMS. So it's good to separate yourself as you start embarking on this journey. If there are enough clues that your pain is of mind-body origin, it's time to maybe stop blaming it on that structural abnormality. All right, fact number 3. Resisting emotional work is part of the syndrome. What do I mean? A lot of people want to initially treat the symptoms in a structural, physical, body-focused way. And the reason for this is that a lot of people are not ready, are not open to be vulnerable about their own emotions, about the feelings that they might have been suppressing. They might not want to go and look back at certain things that happened in the past and to evaluate how these experiences might be shaping the way that they are relating to the world today. Yet this is part of the work, and when you notice a strong resistance in yourself to face certain feelings and emotions, then that's a huge indication that maybe this is actually what you need to do. Resistance to the idea that it's all TMS is part of the syndrome. We want to believe it's something else because it's easier to believe that it's something else. And this is why TMS is not all out there. It's not widely accepted as we would like it to be. It's because internally, a lot of people have resistance to feeling their deepest and most vulnerable emotions. It's a process, and it's something that you can learn, even though you have been brought up maybe another way, even though it might be difficult for you to feel your feelings. I have a separate video on this and on related topics, but just remember, the more you resist believing that this is totally TMS, despite all the evidence, despite the fact that your symptoms are chronic, they manifest in a certain way, the more likely it is that you do have TMS, because the strong resistance to want to get into the emotional work is part of it. And last but not least, point number 4, fact number 4 is that TMS symptoms can be literally anywhere in the body. Again, I see lots of questions on social media asking, but, can you have TMS in the jaw? Can you have TMS in the genitals? Can you have TMS here, there? Has anyone else got this symptom? And the thing is, yes, I've coached hundreds of people. I've seen it all. I've heard it all. Okay. And yes, TMS can manifest literally anywhere because the brain is so powerful, it's so creative, and it tends to come up in those areas of the body that we find the most, let's say, weak, that we perceive as either the weakest or that we are scared of the most, okay? It might be related to our history. Let's say if, if our father was sick, in the stomach, then we might get TMS in the stomach because of that fear that we're going to have something similar to our father, for example. If we've had a bad experience with abuse or rape, it is much more likely to experience TMS in the genital area, for example. This is pretty common. So literally, TMS can be felt anywhere, can manifest in hundreds of weird symptoms. In fact, the weirder the symptoms, the more likely that this is just TMS. This is not to say that you shouldn't get checked out. You should always get checked out medically. But just to remind you that even though you might be thinking that your symptoms are special, they're so weird, there must be something else going on for you specifically, this is probably not the case, because the weirder symptoms are, the more likely it is for symptoms being just a mind-body manifestation. So with that said, I hope that I've given you something to think about for this week. And if you would like more help to get out of the cycle of fear and chronic pain and anxiety, I just want to let you know that I offer a comprehensive program called Pain-Free Breakthrough that will guide you step by step through the emotional work required and the mindset shifts required to get out of pain. It's a whole journey of self-development and learning. So I would invite you to learn more via the links that I'm going to post below the video in the description. That's all from me for today, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.